It was just another foggy evening when I hopped onto that old bus, the one that creaked and groaned, like it carried the weight of forgotten souls. The driver, an old man named Gus, had a face etched with lines that told tales of the miles he'd clocked on that desolate route. Little did I know those lines were just a precursor to the horrors that awaited us. The bus was nearly empty, save for a handful of passengers scattered across the worn-out seats. Each person was silent, their faces pale as if the fog outside had seeped into their souls. I settled into a seat near the back, feeling a shiver crawl up my spine as the engine roared to life. Gus, the driver, had a gaze that seemed to pierce through the haze, as if he could see things beyond the misty veil. He didn't speak much, just nodded at me as I paid my fare and found my seat. There was a heaviness in the air, a tension that gripped my chest and made every breath feel like a struggle. As the bus rolled into the heart of the fog, the world outside disappeared into a white void. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the occasional creak of the bus, a symphony of eerie notes that played as if the vehicle itself was whispering secrets of the road. The first sign that something was amiss came when the road seemed to stretch endlessly into the mist. The landmarks I thought I knew vanished, and the windows turned into mirrors reflecting my growing unease. I peered out into the fog, trying to make out any familiar shapes, but all I saw were shadowy figures dancing on the edge of my vision. Gus, his hands steady on the wheel, remained stoic. He muttered something under his breath, words that sounded like a desperate prayer. I strained to listen, catching fragments of sentences that sent a chill down my spine. The road knows, hungry shadows, never should have taken this route. Fear gnawed at me, and I desperately wanted to ask Gus what he meant, but the words stuck in my throat like cold molasses. Instead, I clutched the edges of my seat, my eyes darting between the fog outside and the strange passengers around me. The bus rattled and groaned, as if the very metal itself was protesting the path we tread. The windows, now coated with a film of condensation, distorted the outside world into grotesque shapes. Silhouettes of twisted figures danced on the periphery, and I could swear I heard distant whispers that sounded like cries for help. As the journey continued, the shadows within the bus seemed to grow darker, more pronounced. The other passengers huddled in their seats near their ease vacant as if they had glimpsed the abyss and couldn't look away. I tried to shake off the mounting terror, convincing myself it was just my imagination running wild in the thick fog. But then came the first scream. It was a guttural sound, one that clawed its way into my ears and rooted itself in the recesses of my mind. I turned towards the source, a woman a few rows ahead, her eyes wide with terror. She pointed towards the window where a shapeless mass of darkness clung to the glass, pressing against it like a hungry creature denied its prey. Gus cursed under his breath, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. The bus swerved, but the fog outside seemed to pull us back onto the unseen path. The shadows within the bus began to writhe, taking on twisted forms that defied reason. In the chaos that followed, passengers screamed and pleaded, their voices lost in the cacophony of the haunted journey. I caught glimpses of grotesque faces in the fog, their features contorted in agony. The shadows within the bus whispered malevolent secrets, revealing the sins of those who dared to tread this cursed route. I tried to make sense of it all, to find a rational explanation for the nightmare unfolding before me. But reason crumbled like old paper, and the world became a fever, dream of horror. The fog outside seeped into the bus, filling the air with a suffocating thickness that made every breath a struggle. One by one, the passengers succumbed to the shadows. They withered away, their forms fading into the darkness as if they were being devoured by some unseen force. Their screams echoed in my ears, haunting me as I sat there, helpless and paralyzed by fear. Gus, the old driver who seemed to know more than he let on, turned to me with eyes that held a deep sadness. He muttered words of regret, blaming himself for leading us into this abyss. I pleaded with him for answers, for a way out of this nightmare, but he only shook his head. "The road takes what it wants," he whispered, his voice a mournful dirge. As the last echoes of humanity faded from the bus, I found myself alone amidst the shadows. The fog outside had become an impenetrable wall, sealing me in with the remnants of a journey gone horribly wrong. I clutched my seat, my heart pounding in my chest, as the bus continued its relentless course into the unknown. The shadows, now a malevolent presence that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, closed in around me. I felt their icy fingers brush against my skin, probing my very soul. Whispers filled the air, secrets and sins that echoed with the weight of eternity. In that moment, I understood the true horror of the Desolate Route. It was a passage to a realm where the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred into indistinct shades of despair. The fog was a veil that hid the hungry shadows, and the road itself was a ravenous entity that feasted on the lost souls who dared to traverse its cursed path. I don't know how much time passed as the bus rumbled on, an eternal journey through a realm of nightmares. The shadows clung to me like a shroud, their whispers a constant reminder of the sins that bound me to this spectral purgatory. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the fog lifted. The bus emerged from the thick mist, and I found myself on a familiar street, the city lights twinkling in the distance. The shadows retreated, leaving behind only the echoes of the horrors I had witnessed. The bus came to a stop, its engine sputtering to a weary silence. I stumbled off the bus, my legs weak and trembling. The night air, crisp and clear, felt like a lifeline after the suffocating fog. I turned to look back at the bus, half expecting it to vanish into thin air, but it stood there like any other weary vehicle at the end of its route. Gus, the old driver, met my gaze with a weary acknowledgement. He understood the weight of what had transpired, the cost of a journey into the heart of darkness. Without a word, he closed the door and the bus rumbled to life again, disappearing into the night, as if it were a phantom destined to roam the desolate route forever. I stood there, a lone survivor of a nightmare that defied explanation. The scars of that harrowing journey lingered, etched into the fabric of my being. The desolate route had taken its toll, leaving me with a chilling certainty that some roads should never be traveled, and some horrors should remain hidden in the fog of forgotten nightmares.